Hey everybody, it's Otter. Ultimately, when talking about XiO Cloud and monitoring and managing the AV enterprise, eventually the subject comes up about devices that don't natively connect to XiO Cloud. So quick review, how can we get devices into XiO Cloud? Well, there's of course the Crestron native devices. Then there is the Crestron XiO connected devices. And then there's this third category, and perhaps one that we mention, but isn't really explained in any kind of super detail. So that's what we're going to cover today. And that's the XiO Cloud Gateway connection software. So a little bit of history about the XiO Cloud Gateway software. Originally, it was actually part of the VC4 platform. At some point, it was broken away as a standalone service, basically removing the need to have a VC4 instance to take advantage of the gateway connector. So with that, we opened up a whole bunch of possibilities using Crestron certified device drivers, ping, TCP/IP, and SNMP connectivity to kind of fill the gaps, hit those blind spots that we find in systems so that we get a better overall picture of what's happening inside the system. So looking at an MVX system, here is a number of devices in here that don't natively connect to XiO Cloud that we may wish to get some kind of status so that we have a more holistic view of the health of the room. So highlighting several pieces here, we're just going to take a few as an example. We're going to go ahead and identify, decide the connectivity type, and then show you how to add them into XiO Cloud. So once you're done getting the XiO Cloud Gateway software installed on the network, claimed into XiO Cloud, what next? Well, let's take a look at our system. So in this system diagram, should be familiar, talked about this one in the NVX video. Here we have a whole bunch of native Crestron devices. They're all going to show up in XiO Cloud. I'm not going to worry about those at the moment. For the purposes of this, we're just going to take a look at a few items in here and how we would basically add them into XiO. A couple pieces here. One, we have a CEN SW PoE switch. Now, although we sell the switch and it has a Crestron model number, it is a NETGEAR device. It does not show up in XiO Cloud, so it's a good candidate. We have a Cisco codec. Another thing that we have a candidate. Now, understand that things that use Crestron certified device drivers can be processor hosted or gateway hosted. In this case, we're going to say, hey, we're going to use the gateway software, though in normal course, you probably use the Crestron certified device driver in the program. And then there's a few other devices like things like the Blu-ray player, or more importantly, the AV capture unit, or a media player like a cable box. So each one of those kinds of things, they're like little blind spots inside your total view of the system in XiO Cloud. And this is where the gateway software comes into play. So let's start off with the most basic. As we've discussed, there are 4 ways of utilizing the XiO Cloud Gateway connection software. And in that, we have the first one, ping. Now, ping's pretty basic. It's just that, it's a ping. So what do we do if we're going to add a ping? So let's talk about the cable box there. Our cable box, we know what IP address it's at. So within the XiO Cloud environment, we go locate our XiO Cloud Gateway, which we've claimed. We come to connected devices. We click on Add Connected Devices. We give it a name. In this case, we're going to call it cable box. We're going to choose how we're going to talk to it. We're going to say ping. And then what we need to know, and all we need to know, is the IP address or host name. In this case, on my network, it's a 250, and I'm going to click Add Device. Once I've added a device, and it's successfully been added, it's going to appear under unassociated devices, which means that it's basically claimed, but as you can see, it's online, but unassociated. So what do? I do the basic stuff. I want to come here to this, to the conference room. I'm going to add device, and there's the cable box for my unclaimed devices. I'm going to add it in, give it a second or two to refresh, and it should show up in the equipment list. So there we have it. We have it in the equipment list. Its online status is good, and there's ping. All it is based on our timings and our parameters, checking, and if, as we had set, 3, if we miss 3 check-ins and a duration, it's going to send an alert should we have set XiO Cloud up for that. So let's head back to the gateway and talk about our second device. So I've got this AV capture unit that's in the system. Bouncing back to the XiO Cloud Gateway at the connected devices, the capture system is basically controlled or has the ability to be talked to over, say, SSH. So I want to make sure that that service port is open. So I get 2 things out of it. Where ping just told me, yeah, there's a device there. The TCP connection actually helps us establish not only that the device is there, but a service, or the service port we're interested in, is actually responding. So what does that look like? Well, we're going to add a connected device. We're going to call it AV capture. We're going to come here. We're going to choose TCP. And you'll notice we get a port number along with the IP address. So that one is sitting at .3, and we're interested in the SSH port. So we're going to say, and we're going to add that device. When it's ready, it's going to show up. If we've done everything right, it's going to appear in our list. So now it's part of that. Once again, I'm going to come here to my conference room. I'm going to click Add Device. And as I type AV Capture, of course, because it's in the unassociated devices, it shows up. Once again, give it a second to refresh. And what we should see is that we now have the AV Capture unit in the conference room that we've defined, and it shows online. Let's do a certified device driver. There's that Cisco codec. Now, this is where, once again, you could use a Crestron certified device driver hosted off the program. Maybe that's not available, wasn't done that way, you're just adding this, we're okay. Here, we can use the Crestron certified device driver because, once again, XiO Cloud Gateway Connection software was originally part of VC4, that engine in there. So what they left in it was the ability to host the drivers. Advantage here, signage displays, standalone devices, these type of things, in combination or in the aggregate here of this, can be added in, whether they're standalone units in these little silo rooms or part of a larger system and just weren't included in program. So we're going to add the device. We're going to call it a codec. We're going to come here. We're going to choose device driver. Now, this is where things get a little different because unlike just having the IP address, we kind of got to know a little bit about the device. In this case, I've got a Cisco SX80 here on the network, and that's what we're going to connect to. The show all device driver versions will show you every version of that device in your search parameters when you go to add it, or just show me the latest. So here we go. I'm going to keep that unchecked. I'm going to come in to select device driver. It's now reaching out to a database, the drivers IO database, and pulling back information of those devices that are compatible. Keep in mind that for this to work, there is IP connection only. There is no IR, there is no 232 offering. This is IP connection only. So if I type Cisco, you'll see I very quickly filter down to 2 basic drivers, one version 1 IP and one version 2. And you'll see that it gives us a supported model list. It tells us what it is, and we can then select it, add driver. It's now added the driver. So we need to now point it at the device. It would like to know the credentials because that's what we need to be able to log into it. And this isn't unsimilar to the way pretty much the web interface works, any other management portal that you would be using works. Here we're just attaching to it for the purposes of getting information. And then, of course, the password. Once I've entered those things, I'm going to click Add Device, Verify, and Show. And bingo, there's our codec. So I'm going to come back to our conference room. I'm going to add the device, and boom, it's up. Now notice where here we had firmware, serial. This will eventually finish populating out as it finishes its connection set. But the differences between these devices and how they present themselves we'll go through in a minute. Now, the last method, SNMP, I'm just going to give you a fair warning here. I consider that the most advanced method of doing this, and that is because it requires a fair amount of cooperation between you, IT. So there's permission, there's setup, and then there's finding the magic OIDs, the object identifiers, which are contained in the magical MIB that is part of the mystery. Not really. That SNMP is. So it's a rather complex kind of setup with everything being referenced by these OIDs, which have translatable terms, but basically are pointers to certain pieces of data. Understand that there are pieces of equipment out there. I've got an 8-port SG300 here, and when I go browse its MIB, it's got a little bit more than basically 30,000 OIDs associated with it. Don't let that overwhelm you. You're looking for very specific things here, possibly. Things like firmware version, uptime, serial number, model, those kinds of more base information, which is why I say it's a little more advanced, and you need some time to work with your IT people or browse the MIB and find the data you're looking for. So let's go add one of those. So back to the XiO Cloud Gateway, we go to connected devices. We go add connected device. I'm going to call this the room NVX switch. And the first thing we start off with is what are we talking to? So 10.0.1.20 in my network, the normal port. And here's the first couple things you need to know besides the IP address. One, are you using the default port? If you are using the default port, great, it's 161. There's this thing called community, and part of that is it helps the IT people scope the request traffic that SNMP has to a certain group instead of just blanket blasting everybody with it. So here in my house, I have the control community, and I'm using v2 no auth, but that also means that there's an authorized version, providing a password to get the information and authorization system. And then here's the magic OIDs, the object identifiers. Now, each object identifier is a little different. They are all numbers, and I'm going to give you an example of what that looks like. So I'm going to add, and I'm not going to go through the process of swamp walking. We can save that for a different video. So let's drop an OID that I know, because I went and found it. And this OID happens to be related to, so you have the name, which is the name you're going to give it, the description. So now that I've added those, we're going to give it a second. I'm going to go ahead and add it to the room. And there's the room NVX switch. It adds it. Bang, bang, bang. I got green check boxes all the way down, so we know things are there. So let's start with the ping and see what we get. So if I go look at the device for a ping, you'll see that I get this. I have no alerts at the moment. Once again, if you want alerting for online and offline, you'll set that up. So here I have it under settings. There's not a lot to change other than what I'm doing, my frequency, how often I'm doing it in minutes, and how many times it has to fail or retries before it says, hey, this device isn't here. All right, the next one, AV capture. This was a TCP IP type monitoring. Tells us that, once again, under settings, same kind of thing we saw in the Gateway XiO Cloud, so we can change or modify that here without having to go back there. The codec. Now the codec's where we're using a CCD driver. Here we get a very data-rich part. Now there's nothing under settings here, so I'm not going to go there, other than what we saw before, which was the login, that information. Here we get some information from the driver, such as you'll notice it's not in standby, it's awake. However, SIP is inactive. We're currently not in any calls, but we can see that no microphones are muted. All of this is on. So some basic information about what's available. And then finally, the good old room switch and SNMP. Once again, under settings, It's very much like what it looked like during the setup in the gateway software. Here under OID entries, we go take a look. You'll see here's the model number of the switch. Here's its current firmware version. Here's the serial number. Once again, with SNMP, you got to spend some time finding the MIB, or finding the OID in the MIB, more importantly, for the pieces of information you need. Things like uptime, power consumption, and they're not all going to be the same for every switch or switch type. It's a standard, but there's also, like any standard, customizable fields. One last thing to mention in here, what people don't always see is how rich the data is from a XiO connected device. Well, I just happen to have one. Thank you to Samsung for loaning me XiO connected monitor for the purposes of this video, so that I could just give you a brief view of it. So underneath my unassociated devices, I have a QBC series. I'm going to go ahead and drag that on up here and drop it into our conference room, just like one of the monitors that would be there. So it's one of those ways of adding that extra to your system. Now you'll see that the QBC series shows up. What makes it different is it's halfway between the CCD driver, which doesn't have any settings in it other than how to connect to it, and the fully blown Crestron device, where we see not everything, but most of the settings. So here we get status like power, input selection, volume, and of course the network information. The thing about this is that those are common, and you would find a lot of those within the CCD. What is very different about this is here we have the ability to select, like, what is the current input. So I could enforce that I'm going to take control and select the input. I can name the inputs. I can come here and determine the wake, right, or sorry, the warm-up time that it takes in seconds, and set the volume. You know, when I was talking about those signage displays and stuff, there's something here. And then also, don't forget that we have power on and off. So expanding the view of XiO Cloud using both XiO connected devices and the XiO Cloud Gateway connector software will help you complete that full view of your systems in XiO Cloud. Well, there you go. That's a show. It's a wrap. Thanks for watching.